Welcome back to SecretSpool's Shadowy Sunday. I'm James, and tonight's story is about the kind of fear that doesn't creep in suddenly, but settles over the years like an invisible pattern you can't escape. Some shadows come from outside of us, but others grow from the moments we can't forget, the losses we try to outrun, and the coincidences that feel too precise to ignore. Tonight's story is about a pattern that has followed someone since childhood, a pattern of loss, repeating every 3 years like a quiet countdown. Let's step into it together. I've carried a secret with me since I was 10 years old, something I've never told a single person in my life. It isn't dramatic on the surface, yet it has shaped my thoughts, my fears, and the way I look at time itself. It began in 2010, when my grandmother passed away. I was still young enough to believe the adults around me were unshakable, but losing her cracked something in my understanding of the world. I didn't connect it to anything larger at the time. It was simply grief. Heavy, confusing, and far too big for a 10-year-old to understand. 3 years later, in 2013, my other grandmother passed away. The adults said it wasn't unexpected, that her health had been fragile for a while. But for me, it felt like déjà vu, another funeral, another loss, another quiet piece of my childhood closing forever. And as strange as it sounds, it was only then that I noticed the first coincidence. Another loss, exactly 3 years after the first. I didn't obsess over it. I didn't believe it meant anything, but the thought lingered in the back of my mind. Then came 2016. This time, it was my grandfather. He was one of the kindest, most patient people I had ever known, and his absence left a kind of silence behind. That was the moment the pattern finally clicked into place. 2010, 2013, 2016. 3 years apart. 3 close family members gone. It felt eerie in a way I couldn't describe, like someone had whispered a secret into my ear, and then vanished before I could ask what it meant. By the time 2019 approached, something inside me had changed. I didn't want to admit it, but I was waiting for something to happen. Every time the phone rang unexpectedly, a cold fear slid through me. And then, at the beginning of that year, a very close aunt of mine passed away from cancer. She was vibrant and warm, the kind of person who could lift any room, and losing her left our family shaken. But in the middle of my grief, the pattern surfaced again. Another 3-year mark. Another person I loved. When 2022 came into view, I tried to stay logical. I tried to remind myself that coincidences exist, that life is messy and unpredictable. But logic only softened the fear. It didn't erase it. My remaining grandfather was aging, and I found myself waking up with that quiet dread each morning, wondering if this would be the year the pattern struck again. And in February of 2022, it did. He passed away peacefully, but his absence hit me hard. Perhaps because I had been bracing for it long before it happened. After that, the pattern no longer felt like something I was imagining. It felt like a shadow walking a few steps behind me, matching my pace, waiting for the next 3-year interval to arrive. I didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't know how. How do you explain to someone that you feel like time itself is working against you, that each milestone year feels like a threat? So when 2025 approached, the dread returned, not loud, not panicked, but steady and constant, like a hum beneath my daily life. I didn't want to expect anything. I didn't want to believe loss could be predicted. But 4 months ago, my cousin died unexpectedly. He was young, with so much life ahead of him, and his passing tore something open inside me. And then, the numbers lined up once again. 2010, 2013, 2016, 2019, 2022, 2025. The pattern continued. After 6 losses spaced exactly 3 years apart, it became impossible to shake the idea that something larger was happening, something I couldn't explain. I don't believe in curses or supernatural countdowns, but I do believe in the way fear can carve itself into your thinking. And now, I find myself terrified of 2028, a year that hasn't arrived yet, but somehow feels like a shadow already cast. The strangest part is that the fear isn't dramatic. It isn't the kind that makes me jump at noises or see things in the dark. It's quieter than that. It's the fear of waiting, the fear of expecting a phone call, the fear of knowing that, for the past 15 years of my life, tragedy has struck on a schedule I never asked for. It's a shadow I can't outrun because the numbers live in my mind, no matter how hard I try to ignore them. People often talk about fear in big cinematic terms: haunted houses, footsteps behind you, something lurking just out of sight. But the fear that follows me is almost gentle. It sits in the background of my thoughts, reminding me to brace myself, reminding me that the calendar is turning. It's a quiet dread, the kind that grows roots and refuses to let go. I've tried to rationalize it. I've tried to remind myself that life events cluster naturally, that coincidence can look meaningful, even when it isn't. I've tried to convince myself that grief has simply shaped my memory in a way that emphasizes patterns. But no matter how many explanations I consider, the unease remains. Because coincidence or not, the pattern is real, and real things leave marks. Sometimes, late at night, I find myself wondering whether the pattern will break someday, or whether it will continue indefinitely. I imagine getting through 2028 without any tragedies, and finally being able to breathe again. But then, I imagine the opposite, and the thought leaves me cold. I don't want to expect loss. I don't want to prepare for it like it's inevitable. But fear doesn't care what I want. The truth is that every loss changed me. Each one taught me to be more present, more loving, more intentional with the people around me. Each one reminded me that time is fragile, that relationships don't last forever, and that the people we love deserve to hear how we feel before it's too late. Maybe the pattern isn't a curse. Maybe it's a painful reminder to stay awake to the moments that matter. Still, even with that perspective, I can't pretend the fear isn't there. Sometimes, I'll be doing something simple, eating dinner, cleaning, walking outside, and the thought will drift back into my mind. 3 years. It's an invisible clock, ticking whether I look at it or not, and the shadow it casts has followed me for more than half my life. I'm trying to learn how to live without letting that fear control me. I'm trying to believe that patterns don't dictate the future, that life can break out of cycles, that not every coincidence means something. But some nights, when everything is quiet and my thoughts have room to roam, I find myself bracing for a loss that hasn't happened yet, and hoping desperately that it never will. Maybe one day I'll understand why this pattern carved itself into my life. Maybe I'll look back and realize it didn't mean anything at all. Or maybe I'll find strength in the way it taught me to love harder, speak kinder, and hold tighter to the people who matter. But right now, standing here in the middle of the story, all I know is that the shadow of 2028 feels closer than it should. As much as the fear follows me, I've started to realize that patterns, especially painful ones, have a way of shrinking the world down to a handful of moments unless you fight to keep living fully. I've been thinking more about how each person I lost shaped the way I love, the way I pay attention, the way I try to show up for the people still here. Maybe that doesn't take the fear away, but it gives it a purpose I can hold on to. Because if the next years are uncertain, then the best thing I can do is fill the time between them with as much connection and presence as I can, instead of waiting for a shadow that may never come. Thank you for listening tonight. Some shadows come from the outside world, and some come from the patterns we carry quietly inside us. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of something you've held in silence, know that you're not alone, and that no pattern, no matter how haunting, decides the future. If you'd like more stories like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next Sunday, take care of yourselves and take care of the people you love.